Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about what I consider to be some of the most influential soft plastic baits made. These are baits that have been around for a long time, but at the same time are still some of the top sellers today, meaning they've withstood the test of time and they've caught a whole ton of fish for a lot of anglers out there. And to me, I think they're some of the most influential baits because they kind of created the craze around the style of bait that they are. There's a lot of other baits now that are on the market by other companies, but I think it's worth noting that these baits, at least in my opinion, are the ones that are extremely influential to the entire angling community. So let's jump right into these baits. You know, for the most part, these are not going to be baits that you guys haven't heard of. They're going to be baits that have just created a category within the soft plastic universe. So in no particular order, let's jump right into these. So the first one is this guy right here. This is the Zoom Super Fluke. The Zoom Fluke in general has been an extremely influential bait. This is one of my favorite colors, actually. This is just the chartreuse pearl. Man, they have caught a ton of fish over the years. They've really kind of defined the soft jerkbait role. Almost every major company now has a soft jerkbait bait. And I know that there's been some other soft jerkbaits that were, if not before them, right around the same time. Things like the Sluggo. But I really got to tell you, to me, the Fluke is the one that is the fan favorite in this category. And it's just something that's extremely versatile, whether you want to fish it weightless, whether you want to fish it weighted, maybe you want to put it on a Carolina rig, a drop shot. You can fish them in a ton of different ways. You can use them as a trailer, an extremely versatile bait that has withstood the test of time and is a dynamite bait. One of the other things I love about them is they come in a ton of different colors. So that is definitely, to me, a influential bait in the soft plastic realm. And a similar bait, not necessarily similar category, but another one that's been around forever. This guy, the Yamamoto Senko. This is the first soft stick bait. In my opinion, the first soft stick bait. This thing is really created a cult following. It is, again, another soft plastic bait that has had a ton of imitators come out. I remember back when this thing first came out and it was selling for $7 a bag. I thought, man, that's an expensive plastic for a straight tail worm that doesn't do much. But the reality is, when you put it on a hook and you see what a soft stick bait like this can do, and it just shimmies on the fall, that it has just created an entire category of plastic baits. And it has been one that, even though there are tons and tons of other soft stick baits on the market, I feel like the Senko is still, one that gets a ton of attention, is still very much out there for anglers to use. And you gotta give recognition to the Senko for what it is, and the fact that it is the starter to the soft stick bait category. So that is another one that, to me, is extremely influential. Not only do we see it, just in the 5-inch size, but now you can find your soft stick baits from really small all the way up to much larger. And they work, again, across the board for bass, as well as a lot of other types of fish. So next in my pile is this guy, the Reaction Innovation Sweet Beaver. The Sweet Beaver, to me, is kind of the hybrid flipping style bait. It's kind of, and again, I could be wrong in this, but it's the bait, in my opinion, that created the whole beaver category. We had cross style baits with big flappers. We had creature style baits that have a ton of appendages. But the first one to really just have a big paddle like this, that really, I'm not going to say created the category, but it's the one that took off first and really got people to recognize it as a beaver style bait. It's just got the big beaver tail, the big flap on the end. And to me, this is a pretty influential bait. Again, not because it kind of started the whole beaver category, but because it gave the idea of flipping creature baits a little bit different of a look. We had flapping style legs and we had bigger creatures with all the appendages, but we had not really seen anything that had a single big flapper that actually gave the bait a little bit more horizontal movement. And to me, that's a huge factor in baits. We're seeing a lot of baits in today's day and age really try to get some of that gliding movement. And the Beaver is the one that did it. I think that, again, anytime you can point to a bait where a whole category is named after it, that's kind of impressive. The Beaver style baits is because of the Sweet Beaver. It's kind of that whole idea of like the first to market. A lot of people start calling that category, like Kleenex are actually tissues, but everyone says, could you hand me a Kleenex, regardless of whether or not it's a Kleenex. The same thing could be said for Fluke style baits, same thing for your Senko style baits. The Beaver is right there as well. Let me put that one away. Okay, the next one I've got in my pile is this guy right here. This is the Berkeley Power Bait Power Worm. To me, this is kind of the OG plastic worm bait, your ribbon tail worms. It's the bait that really got the plastic category to take off. For me, in my childhood, which, you're talking 35 years ago, this was like the first main plastic bait that I ever threw, and it's a fish catching machine. It still catches them to today's time. I will say, I feel like personally, your curly tail and your worm category has kind of shrunk for not any good specific reason other than there's a lot of other plastic choices, but your plastic worm category is still an absolute dynamite bait. Fish it in a lot of different ways. Texas rig it, Carolina rig it. You can put it on a drop shot. Just an absolute fish catcher that for a lot of us, this is the bait that really got us hooked into the bass fishing world. And that was a long time ago. So they're still selling a pile of them as of this day. So you cannot sleep on the power worm. And then the last one, this may be the newest one that I've got with respect to the baits in terms of how long they've been around, but it's been around for a while at this point. And to me, the Keitech Swing Impact Fat is kind of a really critical bait in terms of making the swim bait market take off, at least the boot tail market. They've got a really good stronghold on it. Again, where a lot of people will actually recognize your boot tail swim baits and they'll call them Keitechs, regardless of whether or not they're actually a Keitech. But this bait is one of more recent times that I feel like we've seen just really take an entire fishing industry by hold. Again, it's not necessarily just for bass. You catch pretty much anything that eats bait fish will eat a Keitech, and they make them in all different sizes, from a little 2.8 like this to a bigger one. This is, I think, a 6.8. They've got pretty much every size in between. But to me, again, extremely versatile that in the last couple of years has not been nearly as sought after as it was, just based on the straight tail minnow craze that's popped up. But before that, it was like, this was the bait that everybody had to have, and you had to have tons of them in tons of different colors, and they are still absolute fish catching machines. That's a bait that when I take people out to do guide trips, that's a bait that I end up generally, if it's a newer novice angler, that's one that I know I can count on to catch a bunch of fish of all different species. But these are 5 very influential baits, at least for me personally. I would argue strongly they're very influential in the fishing industry. Let me know in the comments section, what are some of the baits that you think, from a soft plastic standpoint, you found to be very influential and have kind of paved the way for a bunch of other baits within those categories. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, we'll have a new one coming out tomorrow.